Endorse. Endorse. Meaning, to publicly support or approve something. To publicly support or approve something. I endorse ideas that offer practical long-term benefits. I endorse ideas that offer practical long-term benefits. Oppose. Oppose. Meaning, to disagree with or resist something. To disagree with or resist something. I oppose policies that create unnecessary restrictions. I oppose policies that create unnecessary restrictions. Maintain. Maintain. Meaning, to continue believing that something is true. To continue believing that something is true. I maintain that honesty remains the best approach. I maintain that honesty remains the best approach. Presume. Presume. Meaning, to believe something is true without complete proof. To believe something is true without complete proof. I presume that everyone understands the instructions. I presume that everyone understands the instructions. Doubt. Doubt. Meaning, to feel uncertain about something. To feel uncertain about something. I doubt that the issue will disappear on its own. I doubt that the issue will disappear on its own. Suspect. Suspect. Meaning, to believe something is probably true. To believe something is probably true. I suspect that there is more to the story. I suspect that there is more to the story. Affirm. Affirm. Meaning, to state something positively and confidently. To state something positively and confidently. I affirm my commitment to the project whenever concerns arise. I affirm my commitment to the project whenever concerns arise. Deny. Deny. Meaning, to state that something is not true. To state that something is not true. I deny any involvement in the misunderstanding. I deny any involvement in the misunderstanding. Uphold. Uphold. Meaning, to support or maintain a principle or belief. To support or maintain a principle or belief. I uphold values that encourage fairness and respect. I uphold values that encourage fairness and respect. Reject. Reject. Meaning, to refuse to accept an idea or proposal. To refuse to accept an idea or proposal. I reject suggestions that lack clear evidence. I reject suggestions that lack clear evidence. Accept. Accept. Meaning, to recognize something as true or valid. To recognize something as true or valid. I accept constructive criticism as part of learning. I accept constructive criticism as part of learning. Assume. Assume. Meaning, to believe something without checking. To believe something without checking. I never assume that everyone shares the same opinion. I never assume that everyone shares the same opinion. Posture. Posture, meaning to behave in a way that is intended to impress others. To behave in a way that is intended to impress others. I dislike people who posture instead of speaking honestly. I dislike people who posture instead of speaking honestly. Substantiate. Substantiate, meaning to provide evidence for a claim. To provide evidence for a claim. I substantiate my arguments with reliable sources. I substantiate my arguments with reliable sources. Verify. Verify, meaning to check that something is true. To check that something is true. I verify important information before sharing it. I verify important information before sharing it. Validate. Validate, meaning to confirm that something is reasonable or correct. To confirm that something is reasonable or correct. I validate my assumptions before making decisions. I validate my assumptions before making decisions. Ratify. Ratify, meaning to formally approve something. To formally approve something. I ratify agreements only after reviewing every detail. I ratify agreements only after reviewing every detail. Dispute. Dispute, meaning to argue that something is incorrect. To argue that something is incorrect. I dispute claims that lack supporting evidence. I dispute claims that lack supporting evidence. Acknowledge. Acknowledge, meaning to recognize something as true. To recognize something as true. I acknowledge viewpoints that differ from my own. I acknowledge viewpoints that differ from my own. Speculate. Speculate, meaning to form ideas without firm evidence. To form ideas without firm evidence. I speculate about possible outcomes when there isn't enough information available. I speculate about possible outcomes when there isn't enough information available. Certify. Certify, meaning to officially confirm something. To officially confirm something. I certify documents only after checking their accuracy. I certify documents only after checking their accuracy. Concur. Concur, meaning to agree with someone. To agree with someone. I concur with the recommendation after reviewing the findings. I concur with the recommendation after reviewing the findings. Dissent. Dissent, meaning to disagree with an opinion or decision. To disagree with an opinion or decision. I dissent when I believe a better solution exists. I dissent when I believe a better solution exists. Scruple. Scruple, meaning to hesitate because of moral concerns. To hesitate because of moral concerns. I scruple at decisions that compromise my principles. I scruple at decisions that compromise my principles. Reassess. Reassess, meaning to evaluate something again. To evaluate something again. I reassess my position whenever new information emerges. I reassess my position whenever new information emerges. Conform. Conform, meaning to behave according to accepted standards or expectations. To behave according to accepted standards or expectations. I conform to workplace guidelines while still maintaining my individuality. I conform to workplace guidelines while still maintaining my individuality. Rebel. Rebel, meaning to resist authority, control, or tradition. To resist authority, control, or tradition. I rebel against rules that seem unfair or unnecessary. I rebel against rules that seem unfair or unnecessary. Manipulate. Manipulate, meaning to influence people in a clever or unfair way. To influence people in a clever or unfair way. I avoid people who manipulate others for personal gain. I avoid people who manipulate others for personal gain. Imitate. Imitate, meaning to copy another person's behaviour or actions. To copy another person's behaviour or actions. Children often imitate the behaviour they observe around them. Children often imitate the behaviour they observe around them. Procrastinate. Procrastinate, meaning to delay doing something that should be done. To delay doing something that should be done. I procrastinate whenever a task feels overwhelming. I procrastinate whenever a task feels overwhelming. Comply. Comply, meaning to obey a rule, request, or instruction. To obey a rule, request, or instruction. I comply with the requirements before submitting my application. I comply with the requirements before submitting my application. Resist. Resist, meaning to refuse to accept or follow something. To refuse to accept or follow something. I resist pressure when it conflicts with my values. I resist pressure when it conflicts with my values. Exaggerate. Exaggerate, meaning to make something seem greater than it really is. To make something seem greater than it really is. I never exaggerate my achievements during interviews. I never exaggerate my achievements during interviews. Underestimate. Underestimate, meaning to think something is less important or difficult than it really is. To think something is less important or difficult than it really is. I underestimate challenges when I fail to prepare properly. I underestimate challenges when I fail to prepare properly. Overestimate. Overestimate, meaning to think something is greater or more likely than it really is. To think something is greater or more likely than it really is. I sometimes overestimate how much I can accomplish in a day. I sometimes overestimate how much I can accomplish in a day. Boast, boast, meaning to talk too proudly about your achievements. To talk too proudly about your achievements. I prefer to let my results speak for themselves rather than boast. I prefer to let my results speak for themselves rather than boast. Compliment, compliment, meaning to express praise or admiration. To express praise or admiration. I compliment people when they make a genuine effort. I compliment people when they make a genuine effort. Criticize, criticize, meaning to express disapproval of something. To express disapproval of something. I criticize ideas rather than attacking individuals. I criticize ideas rather than attacking individuals. Misjudge, misjudge, meaning to form an incorrect opinion about someone or something. To form an incorrect opinion about someone or something. I misjudge situations when I act too quickly. I misjudge situations when I act too quickly. Observe, observe, meaning to watch carefully and pay attention. To watch carefully and pay attention. I observe people's behaviour before forming opinions. I observe people's behaviour before forming opinions. Intervene, intervene, meaning to become involved in a situation to improve it. To become involved in a situation to improve it. I intervene when a situation starts affecting others negatively. I intervene when a situation starts affecting others negatively. Influence, influence, meaning to affect someone's thoughts or actions. To affect someone's thoughts or actions. I influence others most effectively through my actions. I influence others most effectively through my actions. Mimic, mimic, meaning to copy someone's mannerisms or behaviour. To copy someone's mannerisms or behaviour. I mimic accents only when practicing pronunciation. I mimic accents only when practicing pronunciation. Withdraw, withdraw, meaning to remove yourself from a situation or interaction. To remove yourself from a situation or interaction. I withdraw from conversations that become unnecessarily hostile. I withdraw from conversations that become unnecessarily hostile. Acquiesce, acquiesce, meaning to accept something reluctantly but without protest. To accept something reluctantly but without protest. I acquiesce when further disagreement serves no useful purpose. I acquiesce when further disagreement serves no useful purpose. Instigate, instigate, meaning To cause something to begin, especially conflict or change. To cause something to begin, especially conflict or change. I refuse to instigate arguments over minor issues. I refuse to instigate arguments over minor issues. Perpetuate. Perpetuate, meaning to cause something to continue for a long time. To cause something to continue for a long time. I avoid actions that perpetuate negative stereotypes. I avoid actions that perpetuate negative stereotypes. Disregard. Disregard, meaning to ignore something intentionally. To ignore something intentionally. I disregard advice only after careful consideration. I disregard advice only after careful consideration. Coerce. Coerce, meaning to force someone to do something against their will. To force someone to do something against their will. I never coerce others into making decisions. I never coerce others into making decisions. Succumb. Succumb, meaning to give in to pressure, temptation, or difficulty. To give in to pressure, temptation, or difficulty. I refuse to succumb to negativity during challenging times. I refuse to succumb to negativity during challenging times.